Okay, guys, so this is something new we're going to try. After our discussion a couple weeks ago on Wednesday about being able to do live stream, for our Wednesday night lessons, I thought, I could probably do a devotion in the middle of the week just to give you guys an extra little boost or just an extra word to help you get from one meeting to the next. I was going to originally call these nickel notes and assume that they would be less than 5 minutes. However, that didn't turn out just so well. I'm evidently long winded. Go figure. And so we are going to call these Devos on a dime. And so they should be 10 minutes or less. Anyway, the first one's going to be on overwhelmed. After listening and talking and Snapchatting with a lot of you guys, so many are just overwhelmed with all that they have to do and all the deadlines and all the pressure. And so we're going to take a look at this and see if there's some things we can do to help ourselves just deal with this idea of just being overwhelmed. So you have too much going on. You feel like there's no end in sight, that you're spinning 1,000 plates and there's just no way to keep everything together. You've got school, deadlines, tests, you've got work. Maybe you're working a job and you're not finding any time for yourself, and then you need to find time to hang out with your friends, and you just need some downtime where you can relax and rest and just chill, and your family probably wants to see you sometimes, and then there's this little thing that we call church. You just feel like I just am running out of time and there's just way too much going on. What do I do? Sure, there's a bunch of easy answers that we've all heard 1,000 times. We need to make to-do lists. That's something that I do all the time. And trust me, just because I write it down doesn't necessarily mean that it gets a whole lot easier. Take one thing at a time. Another one of my catchphrases that I tell people all the time. Just do one thing at a time. You'll be fine. Prioritize. Do the first things first, or the most important things first. Delegate. The things that you don't necessarily need to be doing that somebody else can do. Try and find ways to do that. And then, while all that sounds really good, sometimes all of the stuff that we're trying to do to make things easier or less complicated for us is actually just a whole lot more work. Then it's like once you think that you've got everything kind of hanging out there and you've got everything balanced out, somebody needs to add something little. Mom says take out the trash. Coach says run one more wind sprint. Then it's just like that little thing just sends everything that you've spent all this time and all this effort into putting into perfect balance, just sends it all to chaos and falls all apart. Am I right? Have you all ever felt like that? What do we do then? I think we need to look at our life and our schedules as like a scale. Sometimes we add too much to one side and there's not enough to balance it out on the other, or we have just enough on one side and then we've overloaded the other. And when we get to that point, we need to just take a step back, evaluate, and just look at what do we have going on, and what is it going to take to level the level this scale that we call life. The sad part about this is that when we look at our life and we see that everything is all messed up and out of balance, the first thing that we want to do is add a million things to our schedule to try and fix everything. We find that our boyfriend or girlfriend is just not feeling like they have enough time, or our grades are suffering and so we need to add more time studying, or your parents are saying we need more time at home as a get together as a family, or whatever it is. You're trying to add stuff to make everything balanced, and so sometimes we've got 10 plates spinning and then we're going to add 3 or 4 more to try and keep everything else going. It doesn't make sense, but somehow we rationalize it in our head, and so this is what we end up doing. Most of the time we add stuff to an already hectic schedule. Unfortunately, when we do get overburdened, we try and find something that we have to cut out. Usually the first things to go are church, your time with your family, or your personal time where you can just chill and relax. Those three are really dangerous. Why do I say that? Well, you're saying, well, you're the youth pastor. You're supposed to tell us we're supposed to be at church. Yes, that's true. But think about these three things in particular. Church is where you undergird your faith. Family is where you help undergird your identity. And your personal time is where you get all of that opportunity to mesh that stuff together. So when you start cutting those three things out, the very heart of who you are is getting pushed out for all the stuff that you need to or you want to do. And so if anything can get squeezed out, if the evil one can push something out, it's either going to be one or all three of these things. And we've got to be really mindful about that. That if we're going to push something out, be careful which ones you're pushing away. Okay, so if I can't cut church, family time, or my personal time, what can I cut, Pastor Robert? Well, maybe we need to evaluate the things that you quote unquote need. Well, I need to be on Snapchat. I need to be on Facebook. I need to be messaging. Yeah, I get that. And I'm not telling you to get rid of all of those things or that they're the devil. But I am saying that maybe we put a little bit too much time into stuff that's a little superfluous rather than, focusing our energy and effort on other things. So maybe take 15 extra minutes away from, you know, Snapchatting everybody and making sure your streaks are staying alive, and take that time for just downtime for yourself. Or maybe you've got just this extra random club that you don't need to be a part of. You're just doing it just because it sounded like a good idea and you feel bad dropping it. It's okay. Ditch that thing and move along. Find another way to invest that time. The big thing is to learn to set and run your schedule and not vice versa. Don't let it run you. Because if you start letting it run you, that's a bad habit to start now that unfortunately doesn't ever go away. What do I mean by run or be run? This is where we talk about your schedule really mastering you, or you being the master of your schedule. If you don't learn to master your schedule, it will take over your life. Your schedule will tell you that everything on your to-do list is the most important thing. And because everything is the most important, everything needs the most amount of time. And so you feel like you never have enough time to do everything because your schedule is telling you that every single thing on there should command all of your time. So you have to be intentional. You have to consciously decide what the most important thing is and then put the most amount of time to that. And then move on down your list. You'll find out if you take an objective look at what you have going on and you actually decide, is this most important or is this maybe not quite as important, you'll find that you're putting a lot of extra time into things that you really don't mean to. You just allowed it to happen. And so if you let your schedule master you, your schedule, other people, everybody else around you will be telling you what's most important to you instead of you really being able to stop and pray and think and ask, what really is the most important thing going on right now? Then you start to tell me, but Pastor Robert, that's just too hard. I can't do that. I can't let this go, or I need to add this extra time, or I need this extra practice, or I need the extra money. Remember, God's word says I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We take that out of context so many times, saying, see, God says he'll empower me to do everything. Yeah, but it's only if Christ is strengthening you to do it. If he takes his hand off you and chooses not to bless it, you're just going to find yourself running yourself ragged and burning the candle at both ends to where you're no good to anybody, including yourself, your team, your family, your workplace, your school, anything. It has to be done in and through Christ. And so if you want to be able to do all these things, you need to prioritize really and figure out, what is it that I really need to invest my time and my energy and my effort in that's really going to make a difference, not just for me, but for those around me and down the road in the future. But is there anything else that Scripture has to say about being overwhelmed? A lot of times we say, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus did get overwhelmed. Right before he was to be crucified and he knew it was coming, he goes to pray at the Garden of Gethsemane. And when you look at Mark 14, it says, he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And he said to his disciples, stay here and keep watch. Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed. Okay, that might seem kind of trivial, or, well, it's Jesus and he's always going to do the right thing, or, man, the situation that Jesus is in is so extreme, Mine's not that bad. Maybe, maybe not. But the three principles I think we can get out of there would apply regardless. First thing he did was he was honest. He was overwhelmed. He just called it for what it was. He didn't try to pretend that everything was okay. He didn't try and just press through it on his own. He was honest about the fact that he was overwhelmed. And the second thing he did is he asked others for help. He wanted people to pray with him. He wanted people to be there with him. He wanted, people to be able to support him and encourage him. He didn't try and do this all by himself. And the final thing that he did is probably the most important is he spent time praying. He stopped and he went to the one that could fix everything. He went to the one that could be the one that held him up and lifted him up and carried him through the scary, overwhelming times. And the same thing's true with us. We need to be honest that, you know what, I'm struggling right now. We've talked about this in youth before about being authentic and being real. So sometimes it just takes us being honest. I'm overwhelmed. I've got too much going on. I don't know what to do. And instead of getting mad and pouting about it and getting angry and giving up on everything, go ask for help. Humble yourself. Get rid of the pride and say, you know what, I could really use some help right now. And then when when you get to that point, just go to the Lord and say, Lord, you know I'm overwhelmed. You know I've got so much on me. Help me to see things as you do. Help me to see things the way you see them. And ask him for his perspective. And let him give you his perspective on your situation. And maybe, just maybe, things might not look quite so intimidating. I think once we've asked the Lord for his perspective and we've done all that we can and we put it back at his feet, I think we'll realize that when he gets a hold of us, Matthew 6:33 really does take effect. Matthew 6:33 tells us that we need to seek him, seek his kingdom and his righteousness first. And then all these things will be added to us. Everything else will be taken care of. And then I think once we ask for his perspective, once we ask him to guide and strengthen us and lead us and help us put our focus and our attention in the right places and on the right tasks, I think we'll find out that things are a lot more balanced than what they were when we were trying to do them all on our own. Well, Devo's on the dime #1. I hope this was a little bit encouraging and get you through the hard times for a few minutes. You guys take care. Know that I'm here and praying for you guys. God bless.